meeting. Ellison tried to deny it. It's all on tape. They offer him money repeatedly, and he says things like this. I think we may have a poster of it. He says, we are in the middle of the battle with agencies now who are investigating them. He says, he's the Attorney General of the state. He says, Waltz, meaning the governor, agrees with me that this piddly, stupid stuff running small people out.
$250 million. Gone. And someone with the power to stop it didn't. What happens next is the part they don't want on record. Watch carefully.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McDonald, congratulations on your nomination. It comes not a moment too soon. Yet 2 weeks ago, the CEO of LexisNexis told me under oath that the federal government, according to their estimates, to their own expert research, loses $1 trillion per year to fraud. $1 trillion. That's more than the entire defense budget for this year. A more conservative estimate, the GAO's estimate, is that the federal government loses about $521 billion to fraud every year. That's about the budget of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Either way, we're talking about just enormous amounts. And of course, we've seen it on display in states recently like Minnesota. And my question to you is, are we going to see some more accountability coming for the fraud that has been perpetrated on this country, particularly in places like Minnesota? I mean, is accountability coming?
Senator, our goal will be to bring accountability. It will not be easy, but we will work tirelessly to bring that accountability to ensure that the fraud that we are seeing annually is erased.
Let me just give you one example of the kind of accountability I think we need to see. The Attorney General of the state of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, was in front of a committee of mine, and under oath, I would just say, just a couple of weeks ago. Mr. Ellison is right at the center of the scandal, the Somali fraud scandal that has rocked that state. Just to take one piece of it, a group called Feeding Our Future, as you probably know, defrauded the federal government of at least $250 million. $250 million that did not go to feed the homeless. It did not go to feed the poor. It did not go to feed children. Instead, it bought yachts. It bought luxury planes. It bought fancy vacations. It was smuggled out of the Minneapolis airport in suitcases. 12,000 pounds of $100 bills smuggled out of the Minneapolis airport in suitcases, for heaven's sake. 60 people, I think, have been charged with wrongdoing as part of this corruption scheme. But here's the deal. The leaders of this organization, this fraud outfit, came and met with the Attorney General, Keith Ellison, directly. They talked to him for 54 minutes. This was back in 2021, and complained to him that they were being investigated, heaven forbid. And he offered to help them. They repeatedly offered him campaign contributions, and we know this because they recorded the meeting. 54 minutes of recording that we have, because the fraudsters recorded the meeting. Ellison tried to deny it. It's all on tape. They offer him money repeatedly, and he says things like this. I think we may have a poster of it. He says, we are in the middle of the battle with agencies now who are investigating them. He says, he's the Attorney General of the state. He says, Waltz, meaning the governor, agrees with me that this piddly, stupid stuff running small people out of business is terrible. Piddly.
This is the anatomy of institutional protection. Hawley isn't just describing fraud, he's describing a sitting attorney general who allegedly ran interference for the people committing it. The recorded meeting is the weapon here. Ellison couldn't deny the conversation. He tried to deny the money. And Hawley just pulled his own campaign finance report as the rebuttal. That's not political theater. That's a paper trail sitting in public record that nobody in Minnesota's media establishment chose to chase. McDonald's answer was careful, following the facts without fear or favor. But the real question this moment raises is whether federal prosecutors will touch a Democratic state official at all. Drop your answer below. Do you think Ellison gets charged, or does this disappear?
Stupid stuff, meaning investigation for mass fraud. He goes on to say, just to be able to say, just getting the question, just getting the inquiry from the Attorney General is sometimes enough to make people knock it off. In other words, he offered repeatedly to help them get rid of the investigations that were ongoing into this group. Even as they were sitting there, he said to them, I am directing my staff right now to intervene on your behalf. And then just days after he met with them, he took $10,000 in campaign contributions, including from individuals who were indicted by the federal government for fraud. He's been charged with nothing. And in fact, he sat where you're sitting under oath, and he denied to me he took any money at all. I've got it right here. It's in his own campaign finance reports. $10,000, including from indicted individuals and others who are associated with this group, members of this group, that defrauded the federal government of $250 million. My question to you is, are we going to see accountability for people like that? Are we going to see heads roll for people who are in the middle of this fraud and enabled it and protected the fraudsters and defended it and used their office in order to help people get away with crimes?
Senator, first, that is certainly not how law enforcement is supposed to work. When there is evidence and when investigators are digging into potential crime, to then have lead law enforcement try to close up that shop and turn away the investigators. That's not how law enforcement is supposed to work, and it's certainly not how law enforcement is going to work in the Department of Justice and in the National Fraud Enforcement Division. The vision that we have is a division that is large enough where no fraud is too big and no fraud is too small, so that we can reach all actors within the chain of criminal culpability, and no one more than that, only those within the chain of criminal culpability. Those are the ones that we are going to be looking after, investigating, and following the facts without fear or favor.
Good. I think that's absolutely vital. I think it's long overdue. You said that no fraud is too big or too small. I hope that will also mean that no elected official is too big or too small, because those who helped enable this fraud, those who stopped investigations, they should be prosecuted too. If we don't get accountability, as you know, Mr. McDonald, this will never stop, and we need accountability now.
The tape existed the whole time. That's what makes this moment different from every other congressional grilling you've seen recycled across your feed this week. Most hearings are theater. A senator asks a sharp question, a nominee deflects with legal language, and both sides walk away having performed for their base. Nothing moves. Nobody faces consequences. The clip goes viral for 48 hours, and then the story dies. This one has a recording. That distinction matters more than anything else said in that chamber. Because when Hawley describes Ellison sitting across from the leaders of Feeding Our Future, a group that would go on to be charged with defrauding the federal government of at least $250 million, he isn't working from allegation. He isn't working from a whistleblower with an axe to grind. He is working from 54 minutes of audio that the fraudsters themselves created. They recorded the meeting. Think about what that means. The people running the scheme were careful enough to document their own conversation with the state's top law enforcement officer. Why? Because they wanted leverage. Because even they understood that what was happening in that room was something that needed to be preserved. And what was happening in that room? According to Hawley, and according to the recording, Ellison described the ongoing federal investigations into the group as, and this is his word, paltry, stupid stuff. He told them that just getting an inquiry from the Attorney General is sometimes enough to make people knock it off. He told them he was directing his staff to intervene on their behalf, in real time, in the meeting, while they were sitting there pitching him. Days later, $1,000 in campaign contributions arrived, some of it from individuals who would later be federally indicted. Now here is what nobody is asking loudly enough. If a Republican Attorney General had done this, if a red state AG had been caught on tape offering to shut down a fraud investigation, accepted money from the targets days later, and then denied it under oath to a Senate committee, what would the coverage look like right now? You already know the answer. It would be the only story on every major network. There would be calls for resignation before the week was out. Federal prosecutors would be under public pressure to move immediately. Instead, Keith Ellison has been charged with nothing. And that asymmetry, that gap between what the evidence apparently shows and what the institutional response has been, is the real story sitting underneath this hearing. Think about what it takes to get to this point. You need a fraud operation large enough to move $250 million. You need enough political cover that the operation can run for years before charges come. You need a law enforcement environment where the people being investigated feel confident enough to walk into the AG's office and ask for help. And you need a media landscape that decides collectively that this story doesn't warrant the same oxygen as other corruption stories get. 60 people have been charged. The money bought yachts. It bought luxury planes. It was carried out of Minneapolis airport in suitcases, $12,000 in $100 bills, physically smuggled through an American airport, while the people doing it apparently felt protected enough to keep going. But here is the broader question this moment raises. If federal fraud at this scale, $250 million, a recorded meeting with a state AG, campaign contributions from indicted individuals, If all of that isn't enough to produce accountability at the political level, what does that tell every other fraud operation currently running? It tells them the ceiling is higher than they thought. It tells them that political connection is a stronger shield than anyone publicly admits. It tells them that as long as you're aligned with the right people, the investigations become paltry, stupid stuff. McDonald's answer was the right answer in tone. No fraud too big, no fraud too small, following the facts without fear or favor. Those are the right words. But words from a confirmation hearing and action from a functioning Department of Justice are two entirely different things. The test isn't what McDonald says today. The test is whether, 6 months from now, there are federal eyes on Keith Ellison's conduct, and whether those eyes are allowed to follow the evidence wherever it leads, including upward. Hawley's closing line was the sharpest thing said in that room. If we don't get accountability, this will never stop. He's right. And he's not just talking about feeding our future, he's talking about the structural condition that allowed $250 million to move, a recording to exist, a denial to be made under oath, and a political career to continue uninterrupted. If this is the kind of analysis you're not finding anywhere else, you already know what to do. The story isn't over because the accountability hasn't arrived yet. Ellison is still in office, the recording exists, the campaign finance reports are public, and a brand new National Fraud Enforcement Division just got a nominee who made a promise under oath on the public record. Whether that promise gets kept, that's the thread worth pulling. Subscribe, share this with someone who thinks the fraud conversation is only happening on one side of the aisle, and drop your take in the comments, because this one deserves a real discussion, not just a scroll past.